Dear listeners, there are places in the world where trauma is not something that you read about. It is something that you breathe, where grief is not an abstract concept. It is a landscape. And yet, in those very places, people find ways to keep going, to serve others, to hold on to something larger than survival. And today we are going to talk about what it takes to carry hope into the hardest places and uh, what that kind of work does to a person over time, right? So, hey, dear listener, welcome back to another powerful episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host, Avik, and I'm really glad that all of you are here today. So, this is the show. It's all about the real, messy, wonderful, beautiful work of taking care of your mind. Yes, one conversation at a time. So, today we are having a conversation that goes deep part of resilience, faith, and what it means to witness suffering while still choosing to show up. Yeah. And we have a very lovely guest who is joining us. Please welcome David Small. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Avik, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Amazing. Amazing. So, dear listeners, like before we get into the discussion, I would quickly love to introduce you to David. So, David, who has spent the last 10 years working with the Burma Rangers, in one of the most conflict affected regions in the world and has just written a book called Nameless Faceless People about their journey. I mean, it's really great to having here, having David with us here today, dear listener. So I'll not take much of a time. Let's get started. Yep.
Great.
Yeah. So David, a lot of people think that trauma is something that only affects a person who went through the event directly, but you have been surrounded by it for years and years, not as someone who experienced the war as a soldier or a refugee, um, but as someone choosing to be present in it. So, if you can share, like, what is the biggest misconception here people have about what trauma does to those who witness it, especially for, I mean, long periods of time? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I had some training as a soldier. I was in the Canadian Army when I was younger. So I did have some training as a soldier, but as an aid worker or somebody who's working in a nonprofit, um, you voluntarily choose to go to the front line, or you voluntarily choose to go and serve in conflict zones. And when you're a soldier, you're forced to go there. You know, it's your job, it's your description, and you're actually paid
Yeah.
often a good salary to go and see these things on the front line. And I really think there's a big difference between those that are paid and like doing it out of obligation, forced to be there, versus those who have made a decision based on a calling in their heart to say, I will go and help these people because they need help. And then you experience trauma in that situation. And for me, trauma was a difficult thing because it became like a buzzword, especially in North America, where I come
Mm.
from. Trauma is almost like a buzzword, like, oh, somebody cut me off in traffic and I have trauma, or they made my latte order the wrong kind of latte, or they used the wrong kind of milk and now I have trauma. And it just kind of became this cultural buzzword. And so then when I was serving in the war zone,
Yeah.
it was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna even entertain the idea that I might
Mm.
have trauma because I just don't wanna go down that road," because it was just I was sick of it being a buzzword. But
Mhm.
in reality, it is something that we all will face, and we will all have, to come to grips with what trauma looks like in our own lives.
Mm. No, correct. Definitely correct. Yeah. So when you were in it day after day, did you notice it happening to yourself, or was it something that you only saw looking back?
Um Good question again. It's something where there I can name some very specific moments in the war in Burma. And Burma's been having
Mm.
the longest running civil war in the world.
Mm.
And so for 77 years there's been fighting in Burma. Some people might call it Myanmar. Um And so, yeah, there were very specific days where I came home at the end of the day or came back to our camp area
Mm,
and thought, wow, okay, there are things that I saw today or things that I experienced today
mm,
that I'm going to need to deal with later. But in the moment, you don't really have a lot of time
mm,
to deal with it because of the pace of the day to day
mm,
and the pace of our lives. And even in the West, the pace of our lives is
mm,
so fast. And we often don't give ourselves enough time to
mm,
slow down and actually say, okay, what happened today? And
mm,
so I came up with a quick little check-in for my team that was super helpful in just allowing us to say, okay, what happened today and how did I feel about it?
mm. Definitely. I mean, and that is the definitely it's the longest war in the world for sure. Yeah. And
Yeah. And I
mm,
came to grips with trauma just to by
mm,
by saying, okay, was it overwhelming? Was there something today, or is there something in my past that felt overwhelming and out of control?
yeah.
And something might be overwhelming, but
Mm,
we maintain some semblance of control over it. And other things we might be out of control, but it's not that overwhelming. And so neither of those events kind of classify as trauma. But when an event is
mm,
very overwhelming and you have no agency and no control,
mm,
suddenly that is a moment where trauma is growing, and your ability to have trauma held in your brain or held in your body is big when
mm,
it's out of control and overwhelming. And so at the end of each day, I would just circle up the team and say, okay, hey guys, you don't have to answer this publicly, but I want you all to think about it. Was there something today where you felt out of control and overwhelmed? And it allowed them just to name that
mm,
moment or name that thing in their lives. And that's half the battle, is just naming it, because we're so busy and the pace is so fast. And so a simple question like that allows us to just name it and give it space to say, yes, okay, that did feel overwhelming. That did feel like I had no control in that moment. Okay, that could be something I need to pay attention to.
exactly. It is so, so important. And we often assume that we will know when we are being changed by what we see. But sometimes the weight
Yeah.
accumulates so quietly that we do not even notice until we
Yes.
kind of try to set it down. Right. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's like, if you're carrying a backpack and
Mm,
you add a small rock into your backpack,
yeah.
you don't notice too much, but if you keep adding small rocks and you're never taking any rocks out of your backpack,
Mm,
eventually that backpack is gonna weigh you down. And maybe it takes you a year and maybe you get a little bit stronger from carrying that weight,
mm.
but eventually it's going to weigh you down and tire you out. And you're not going to be able to go any further. You're not going to be able to help people. And so you have to then deal with the rocks in your backpack, the trauma that you've collected in your life.
And one more thing is like you have also written about the grief and loss
Mm.
and some of the most extreme circumstances, which is, I mean, imaginable. I mean, so what have you come to understand, like, about why some people are able to continue moving forward in the face of devastating loss, like and at the same time, while others get stuck, not because they are weak or weaker, but because something inside them cannot seem to find a next step.
I wish I had
Mhm.
a magic answer for that, or I wish I had a secret
Right.
a secret formula. Like, if you just do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, um, then you'll be fine and you'll be able to keep moving forward. And to be honest, I don't. It's like you said in the introduction. Like, this is messy. This stuff is a messy journey for a lot of us to go through, and we all will deal with that mess in different ways. Um, in my book, Nameless Faceless People, I wrestle with a lot of grief and a lot of um dear friends that have been killed in the war zone in Burma over the last decade that I've been working there. And yeah, it's really hard. And grief, it comes in waves. it comes at us in different waves, and sometimes you'll have a long time between one wave and the other, but then one day you'll just be sitting at a stoplight and you'll get this wave of grief crash on you, that seems to come out of nowhere. And it's just a part of the process of grieving. And it's non-linear. And so, we talk about the stages of grief. And now I run a school. It's called the Jungle Discipleship School. And I take young people from the war zone, and we spend 10 months together at the school. And I teach them about the stages of grief, but it's not a linear process. And you'll go from one stage to stage one to stage seven to stage four and then back to stage one, and you're kind of bouncing all around. And yeah, it's a different journey for each of us. And I really believe that one of the biggest things that sustained me is having purpose. I have purpose and I have a mission that I feel called to do, to serve the people in Burma, to serve the young people at the Jungle Discipleship School, and that purpose keeps me going. It's not a paycheck. It's not a financial thing. I'm not getting rich running a nonprofit. And so it's this purpose that I definitely feel that my life has been called to this mission, and that helps sustain me through grief and through trauma and through all these difficult times.
Very true. And also, like, in the communities that you worked with, were there rituals or practices around, like, grief that helped people metabolize it in a way that felt different from what you had seen elsewhere?
Um, in the ethnic communities that I work with in Burma, I primarily work with young people, kind of 18 to early 20s. Um, those are the people that attend my school,
Mhm.
and they come with very serious addictions and alcohol, especially to alcohol.
Mm,
And so this is not I don't haven't seen any sort of unique thing in the culture community how they intentionally deal with
mm,
grief. There are unintentional ways they do it. But one of the things is that these soldiers, they don't know how to deal with grief.
mm,
And they're losing their friends and their comrades on the front lines in the war. They're losing family members. Every single one of my students has had to flee, or their family has had to flee from the war. And so they often don't have the tools or the words to know how to handle grief and how to deal with it. And so they
mm,
turn to alcohol, and it's this homemade kind of whiskey moonshine that they make out of rice, and it's everywhere, and it's what people use to shut their brain off, to
mm,
stop thinking about the memories and the images, and then they end up with major dependency on alcohol. And so one of the
mm,
things at our school is sometimes we have these soldiers or these young people that come to the school to spend time learning what we're teaching there, but first they need to go through this process of detoxing
mm,
and learning to name their addictions and learning to kind of heal from the alcohol dependency that they've developed.
mm,
But the other flip side to that is that in Burma
mm,
and a lot of Asian countries, the community is so important, and so
mm,
people are not isolated. And in the Vietnam War, Korea War, World War II, soldiers come back to North America or come back
mm,
in the West, where we live in single bedroom apartments, or we live on our own. We don't
mm,
live like with family and second and third generation family members.
mm,
We live in these one bedroom apartments, and we're very isolated. And
mm,
even, we live in the day and the age of Facebook and social media, and you may have 10,000 friends on social media and feel so isolated and feel so alone.
mm,
And so I think in the Asian culture, and especially in Burma, they place a big importance on community. And nobody lives alone. I've never seen anybody where it's a single person dwelling. Everybody lives with other people. And I think just that being immersed where what I bring to the table is needed in this community, it helps people to heal from grief and trauma.
mm. I agree. I agree totally. And um, also, like, You have been running something called the Jungle Discipleship School in Burma, where
Mhm.
you teach students about nutrition, psychology in a war zone. So, for someone who is listening who has never been in that kind of environment, if you can share, like, how does something like nutrition even matter when people are just trying to survive? Like, and what have your students taught you about the connection between body and the mind in those conditions?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that question. Um, this was something,
Mm,
I'm not trained in counseling, I'm not trained in trauma.
mm,
I've lived the last 12 years in this war zone, and there's
mm,
things that I've had to just figure out or learn or observe. And I spend my own time every summer in counseling, um, and debriefing the year. And so I've learned some of the skills along the way, and I do a lot of reading. But one thing I was not anticipating was the value of nutrition. And as we're talking about grief, we talk about loss. Grief is tied to loss. You've lost
mm.
a family member, you've lost a home, you've lost something. And I was surprised. I shouldn't necessarily been surprised, but I was a little bit surprised that my students were able to vocalize that they've lost their ability to dream.
Mm,
They feel like their dreams have been stolen from them because of
mm,
the war. And so as this school year went on, and at our school year, this was just because I like nutrition, not because I'm a nutritionist, but I like to have, 3 meals a day with lots of vitamins and just a healthy diet. And the thing that's interesting is that if you don't know where your food is going to come from tomorrow,
yeah.
psychologically, you actually cannot dream about your future. You can't plan what you want to be or have goals or things like that, because all you're worried about is, hey, where's food going to come from tomorrow? And then over the course of the school year, the students stopped worrying. They knew, okay, tomorrow we're going to have food at the school. Tomorrow we'll have nutrition at the school. I don't need to worry about that anymore. And it takes time. It takes time for the brain um to relax and accept it. But once they do, excuse me, then they're able to start to dream about the future. They're able to set goals and start to imagine, I'd really love to become a medic, or I'd really love to become a teacher, or I'd love to become a lawyer. And they have these kind of dreams that are suddenly unlocked because they're no longer worried about their nutrition. They're no longer worried about where is their food security. And the other thing that I noticed is that
Mm,
my students physically started to grow. And I have these 19, 20-year olds, and it was like suddenly they're getting nutrition every single day. And over the span of 9 months, some of them shot up like 5 inches. And
yeah.
it was incredible, like, their bones and their body was saying like, "Whoa, I'm getting nutrition. I'm suddenly,
Mm,
I'm suddenly healthy again, and now I can start to grow." And their bodies actually started to respond to the nutrition in a healthy way. And it was so cool to see these students just shoot up like 4 or 5 inches over the course
mm.
of the school year.
I agree. I agree. Totally agree. And did you see moments where addressing something as basic as what someone was eating actually shifted their ability to cope emotionally or spiritually?
Um, I I didn't pay enough attention to that. But so I don't know something specific that they would have eaten that would have shifted in them.
Uh-huh.
But I did notice we give our students
Mm,
an outlet to do artwork. And in the beginning, and it's kind of unstructured time where they can paint whatever's inside them, whatever they want to do, whether they're a good artist or a bad artist, it doesn't matter. And in the early days, I noticed that, oh, the colors they were choosing to use were these reds and oranges and yellows and blacks, and it was like kind of these fiery colors that were
mm,
coming out that they were just subconsciously choosing to paint their pictures with. And it was because their country is on fire. And it seems like your whole world is burning down around you, and they use these colors to express. And maybe they're drawing something nice or beautiful, but they use these colors. And
mm,
as the school year went on, I noticed a lot of the artwork started to shift to blues and greens and softer colors, softer images. And it was almost as if their body was relaxing,
mm,
and without any sort of prompting or guidance, their brain and their mind were able to say, okay, I'm no longer on fire. I'm not in a place where I'm burning up anymore. Now I can relax and kind of express things in cool and relaxed, calm colors. And so just the ability to give the students an outlet to paint and to do art, which is something I'm not very good at, but I just thought, okay, I'm going to give them this opportunity. And then it was just so cool to see their response to that.
mm. Amazing, amazing. And also, like, looking back, is there something you wish you had known earlier about how to protect your own heart uh, while still staying open enough to do that work?
Yeah, I that's a good question, a big question. Um,
Yeah.
I I I I wish I knew that there's a form of therapy called IFS, internal family systems, and I'm a big believer in the ideas, the concepts behind IFS, and
Okay.
basically there's all these different parts within us. And in conversation, we say something like, "Oh, part of me wants to do that, but part of me wants to do this, or part of me wants to go here, and part of me wants to go over there." And we express it in this way of there are different parts within us.
Mm,
And I wish I knew about that years ago, and to just say that, okay, all of these different parts of me
mm,
are trying to protect me, and they're not bad. And even the part of me that, for example, if I'm getting bombed in a bombing in the war zone,
mm,
there's one part of me that is terrified, that is like my hands are shaking, my body is shaking. And then there's another part of me that's kind of angry at that, that's
mm,
angry at this, that wants to be able to prove myself and to prove that, okay, I can take care of people, I can take care of myself. And these are two different parts, and neither of them are bad. They're
yeah,
both trying to do something and say something to me. And I wish I would have learned this earlier, that I need to welcome all of these parts of
mm,
me, and all parts of me are welcomed to what I'm experiencing, what I'm facing, and who I am.
mm. Got it. Definitely, definitely, I got it. Yeah. So, that's amazing. And if you have to give one advice to the listeners today, what that will be?
Um, I would, yeah, you know what?
Mm,
None of this stuff is happens accidentally. No, nobody heals from trauma accidentally.
mm,
Nobody heals from trauma in isolation. And so we have to be intentional
mm,
about it. And we can say something like, "Yeah, I'm fine. No, it's no big deal. It's okay. I'll be fine. I just need a little bit of time." But in reality, we need people in our lives. Nobody heals from trauma alone. Nobody heals from trauma by reading books. You heal from trauma by talking with other people and being in community with other people. And so I just think we need to be intentional to take it seriously, to take our health seriously. Like, the health of our minds affects the health of our body. And um and you can keep putting it off and keep waiting, but it's taking away years from your life and life from your years. And so
mm,
I just think it's so valuable for people to say, okay, I'm gonna take this seriously. And
mm,
there's so many resources available nowadays, and counseling is available. Like, you can get
mm,
online counseling, and you can say, after 5 or 6 sessions, you can say, you know what, this counselor is not for me. And I'm going to fire that counselor, and I'm going to find the counselor that is right for me. And
Exactly.
you don't just give up after one or two tries, but you actually say, okay, you know what, this is something that's important and worth me finding the right fit so that I'm comfortable to
Mm,
unpack some of my life and some of my story.
mm. I agree. Amazing. And if listeners wants to connect with you, how they can connect?
Yeah, so I run a program called the Jungle Discipleship School, and we call it JDS for short, Jungle Discipleship School. And so people can go to jds.asia or JDS or junglediscipleshipschool.com. Both of those
Mhm.
kind of lead to the same place. And people can also, my book, Nameless Faceless People, it just came out recently and it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and basically anywhere that books are sold, you can get a copy of my book. And if people want to connect with me, they can do it through the Jungle Discipleship School. There's ways that they can yeah, just let me know. And I'm curious, there are questions that they may have
Mm.
or what they thought of this podcast episode. They're welcome to email me their feedback and or any questions about the war in Burma or what we're doing at the Jungle Discipleship School.
That's really amazing. Really, really amazing. So great. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links, details, everything into the show notes for easy reference. And I'll say if there is one thing to carry from this conversation, it is this that healing is not about escaping the hard things. It is all about, I'd say, learning to move through them without losing your humanity along the way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that is the most important thing I'd say. Uh, and thank you, David, for sharing your story and your heart with us today. And it's very, very important. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Avik. And thanks everybody for listening.
Amazing. And dear listeners, like, thank you so much for being here today and for letting this conversation sit with you. And I'd say, like, whatever you are carrying right now, I hope uh, you know that showing up for yourself, even in small ways, is much enough. And taking care of your mind is not about getting it perfect, but it is about staying curious, staying compassionate,
Mhm.
and remembering that you are allowed to be human, right? That is the first important part. So yeah. So with this hope, this is your host Avik, and this is Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Thank you so much.